As we mark 100 years of the Irish Army Equitation School, this series honours the riding officers and personnel whose services and achievements define its legacy. My role in this series was to speak to those who played a key part in that history, to better understand the experiences and motivations behind their careers. These conversations reflect how their influence extended well beyond the arena, informing coaching systems, influencing breeding policy, inspiring future generations, and promoting the Irish horse internationally. This episode is part of that centenary story. You were born in County Limerick.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned a short while ago to me, then you later, at a young age, you moved to Kildare, which you've spent the majority of the rest of your life while you're in the country.
Yeah.
Could you talk me through your earlier involvements in the horse world? How did that begin back when you were in your pony years, we'll call it?
Yeah, I hadn't very much pony years really.
Okay.
But my father was always interested. Willie was always interested in horses because his family in County Limerick in Atlaka had a lot of horses at one stage. So he liked horses and always liked horses. So early on he would have brought me to a riding school. I went to a riding school in Tala for a while, and then another one in Leixlip and stuff like that. And that used to be, and I suppose I find it interesting now that I'm involved with the coaching, just to try and look at myself how I was then. I would say quite, not afraid, but I was nervous. And I used to throw up regularly before going to the riding school, not because I was afraid of the riding or the jumping, but kind of being in public, riding ponies or horses or whatever. And I see it nowadays with, people later on, how people can learn to deal with that, And I myself had to work on it so that I was able to be in a situation where I felt comfortable with that. So that's how I started off with riding ponies at riding school and that. And then we got a horse at home, but it was a very, very cheap horse, and we kept it at home, actually kept it in the garage at home.
Okay.
And that's where it came out of. So I would start with that, and then I started hunting. So I hunted with the Killares, and I hunted with the Meads, and I hunted with the Tara Harriers and stuff like that. So I was very enthusiastic. Some of the years I did 30 or 40 hunts. So, at school they weren't too impressed with me because I'd be trying to get out on a Monday for some place or on a Friday or something like that. So that's how I got going. Did very little competition. And then I was very lucky. I met a lady called Pam Stokes who was in Maynooth. And Pam Stokes said if I needed lessons, I could come over and do some painting down at a local place in Moyglare. I wasn't Rembrandt and like that, I was painting walls. Yeah. So it was a bit different. So that's what I used to paint and do clean cattle sheds and then get lessons.
In exchange? In
exchange, yeah. It was the bartering system at that stage. And I'd cycle over and cycle back home and stuff like that. And so it developed from there. So I started to do hunter trials and then with them, and she would pick me up and she would bring me, and she got a loan of a pony for me, and the pony was a very nice pony. And so I would have done the hunter trials, and then I did a few pony competitions, show jumping, maybe 2 or 3, and that was it. So that was how I got up to probably around when I was 17. And then I had seen a program about the army on the TV, and it went through the riders and who was in the equitation school and stuff. And it kind of, I said, that's a route maybe I could take. That really started the whole thing for me, having an interest in the army. Tried to find out about it then, who was in it, and it's at the time, up around that age there was Ned Campion and Larry Kiley and Ronnie McMahon and people like that, who became colleagues of mine later on. So that's really how it started,
Would you have had much exposure to army riders, either at local shows at that time, or was there anyone that you or your family knew that you could speak to about that? Like, how close had you been exposed to the army?
Not at all, no, virtually not. At some stage, I met a Captain O'Reilly, and he was, I think, the administrative officer here in the school, and he kind of encouraged me. I met him, I was at the horse show and I met him down at the horse show in uniform, and maybe he was chatting to me at the practice fence or something like that, and he said, you know, you should think of the school, and he told me how it was and encouraged me and whatever. And really, after I did my leaving cert, I put in to go and do the interview for the cadets. So that was the only exposure I had. I had no really knowledge of the Army before that.
Okay. What was it about the idea of the Army that you think drew you to it at the time, or that made you want to pursue it?
Well, there was a number of reasons. I mean, I used to play a lot of hurling at the time. I was into keeping fit and stuff like that. I played with Cadet under 16s, which, I could see that if I didn't make it at the horses, that there were other elements of the Army that would be good for me, you know. So I thought that, and the opportunity at that time also to do university. Everybody who went in at that time had to go to university.
Okay.
On the second year, it was a part of your contract to go there, and obviously the horses were very high up in the list, you know, that I would have a chance to at least try for it.
And because I guess at the time it was probably difficult to imagine a reality where you'd have that level of horsepower, say, privately.
No, there was no chance. Absolutely no chance. I mean, at that time, an equestrian career was not open to me. Even though, you know, it was always borrow a pony or ride somebody else's horse or whatever else like that. And I was lucky. People in the locality would give me a horse or a pony to ride, go hunt and do that kind of stuff. But that's kind of the background I had, you know. Yes. So I was lucky. Lots of people. There was another lady, Gisela Holstein, she lived in Carberry. I was out one day, I was walking to the hunt with the pony because we didn't have a horse box. So I would hack to all the hunts. And sometimes it was quite far. I'd hack from Kilcock to Clane. We'd end up in Newbridge. I'd have to hack back in the evening. I mightn't be back till 12 o'clock at night from the hunt, you know. But I was going to the hunt, and this horse box, she was late for the hunt, so she was flying past, and she went fairly quickly past me. So I was put my hand up, gesticulating in some form or fashion, and when I met her afterwards, she came up to me and she apologized. Said, "I'm very sorry. I was just in a hurry." And I said, "Yeah, you were a bit quick there." But she said to me, "Would you like to come over and ride?" So she brought me to Ferenstud, actually in Kilcock, and I spent good time there. And even when I joined the Army, I used to drive down to her. She had then moved to Carberry, and she taught me a lot about flat work, helped me with the jumping, and then I helped her kids a little bit as well, Eric and Heike. So she was really helped me an awful lot in the formation of a work ethic for this kind of a career.
It would have been a great start at that time and a great head start to get exposure to a system like that and flat work.
Yeah, she had just completed a book called Training Show Jumpers with a guy called Anton Palman. And so she was very planned. Everything had to be perfect. Every piece of tack was taken apart every day and cleaned, then put back together. She had very, very high standards. The fences, where they went, cleaned up every day. Everything had to be sorted. Very good with gymnastic exercises, which to this day I would use. She gave an awful lot of herself, and hopefully I gave a good bit back to her as well and to her family.
Could you talk me through the experience, especially for those of us who never really have gone through a cadetship or anything like that? When you apply for the Army, from the point of applying to landing in McKee Barracks here, what's that process like?
Nervous, I would say, yeah, because it was a bit of an unknown. So you're there and your mother and father and you're at home and all that. And then one day you get into a car and you drive over to the Curragh. And they throw you out, and that's the end of it. They are gone. And at that stage it was probably, I mean, within 10 miles you weren't allowed to go outside, and within that 10 miles you couldn't go to the pub, or you couldn't go, you know, you were just the prisoner of Zenda in there for that period of time. So it was completely different. And I mean, the schedule in there, and I think it's fantastic. I mean, it was really what helps you with competition. There was kind of pressure all the time, either physical or mental pressure, lifestyle pressures, yeah. and then learning skills and having to learn them quickly, and then the fitness aspect of it, trying to be fit. So I used to run from the Curragh into Newbridge every night and back. And at that time, obviously, it was the roads were good, but there was pressure every day. To make sure the room was good, to make sure that that you were dressed properly and all the rest. You had inspections very often, but everything was, you were under pressure to do it on a time basis. So it helped you a lot to be more organized. So that organization skills would come from that. And you had all these young fellas coming in, they thought, oh, the army, great crack, it'll be easy. It isn't easy. And the varied skills, they had courses on courtesy and etiquette, then you had public speaking. And then at that time, I was very weak at Irish, and a lot of this instruction was through Irish. So I was weak, and so they gave you a course when you went in on Irish, and I got to some degree of possibility, but I found it difficult. They would give you, let's say, I had a 10-minute talk on population explosion, for instance, through Irish to do. And so you had the thing of the public speaking in front of your class and in front of the instructors. And then on top of that, you had, which I had, the language difficulties. So it put you under a little bit of pressure. And I found that with all courses that I did with the Army. I did the standard infantry course and the command and staff course. And, I always kind of felt uncomfortable. And particularly if I was with coming from a horse background, where later on in the career, many of the guys on it would have had good army experiences in Lebanon and various places. But I found that the courses were fantastic to get you to think quicker, to get you to organize better, to get you to communicate better. So a whole heap of skills that are so valuable in life. And that's why a lot of the people who leave afterwards have contributed to society outside.
And that's what I'm thinking, that irrespective of what your equestrian career ends up becoming, you have such a solid foundation built from that. But even I wasn't aware of the public speaking element. So you're effectively being media trained before you need to be media trained.
Yeah, public relations, elements in it, crisis management to some degree, so there are a lot of that. What happens if an Army Land Rover runs over somebody? What kind of a reaction as you as a unit commander have to come up with? So, and the people that you're meeting have such a wide variety of skills. You go on an Army course, you meet engineers, you meet the guys in the Navy, the guys in artillery, the guys in transport, and they all bring something to the party. You learn a lot, and I would still meet them. Like my own class, our class was the 46th Cadet class. We still meet reasonably regularly every year, and we're not in the first flush of youth now, so a few are limping and a few are walking slower. But we meet, and there's still good banter and a good connection.
In those earlier years, you survive your cadetship. You arrive in McKee Barracks. Who were some of the individuals at the time, the kind of key people of influence that would have molded you in those formative years? Both people who were based here full-time and, say, the likes of, my understanding is there were also outside trainers that were coming in and being involved here. Could you talk me through some of those influential characters at that time, and maybe what impact or how they maybe changed your approach or impacted you going forward?
When I came here, I think there could have been 11 or 12 riders here at the time. So they all had different standards, but it was very clear from the day one that if you didn't improve or show a capacity to be a successful international rider, then your career here would be very short. So you get a year, and if it wasn't going well, you might get a year, or you might be gone after the first year, you might go the second year. So it was always a little bit looking over your shoulder, and it was good to have that because it kind of inspired good standards. At that time here, when I came here, I think it could have been shortly after I came here, a guy called Boubel, Eric Boubel, came here, and he had been the 3-day event trainer in the US, the national trainer, and then I think he had come originally from the cavalry school in Germany. He was really, really good on the flat, absolute great work ethic. I mean, I used to have to change at lunchtime, to change the clothes at lunchtime. Well, I mean, I work you really, really hard. And he was at the jumping okay, not as strong at the jumping as he was at the flat, but he gave us a really good grounding on flat. Colonel Billy Ringrose, he was here. Everybody would take him seriously. He was a successful rider, international rider himself. He was serious to have good standards, and he was serious about continuing to look to be better. And he was like a manager where, you know, if you weren't making it, you knew you weren't making it. Brought in certain things like the video analysis we used to use on a Friday. We'd have a dressage test in the indoor, and we'd go into the back then and have a look and see what guys were doing, and were they leaning to the inside or what were they doing.
Is this 80s?
Yeah. And then we had Colonel Ned Campion, and Colonel Ned Campion, yeah, it would have been, I suppose, closer to me. He had been very successful. I remember seeing him winning the RDS, and Larry Kiley the same, who was here, and very, very good riders, competitive riders. Ned particularly was extremely stylish, and Larry was actually very well known for the puissance. He regularly won the puissance in Dublin. He was a Tipperary hurler. The Clash of the Ash, he was a fit guy who kept himself well. So yeah, these were good people to have there. They expected high standards from you. And I think that's good. I think there were a lot of different influences in that. Then there were some other younger guys, and then you did see on December or November, you did see guys going. And they weren't going because they wanted to go. Yeah. They were going because it was felt that they weren't reaching the standard required.
And I suppose by going, it's that they end up being transferred to another unit.
Yeah, another unit. Yeah, that's the choice you have, and you know that coming in. And for some, it gave them careers in different places, you know. So when you're originally commissioned, you're commissioned to a certain unit, either transport, you could be artillery, you could be infantry, whatever. But so those choices are there, and people, when they would be leaving here, might get a choice, or if there's a requirement somewhere, maybe they'd just be told you're off to X or Y. So one day you'd be here nightclubbing in Dublin, and the next you might be doing it in Athlone.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Who was the first person that you felt really saw something in you and really either pushed you to achieve that or helped you to achieve that?
I don't know. I think that's a hard question now for me, because I think people who know me would think that I'm kind of all the time a bit pushing myself. So it's not that I got help from an awful lot of people. Mm. So therefore, and I, of course, extremely grateful for that. I don't know, did I need a lot of pushing? Maybe I needed less pushing, maybe. I don't know. But there's really a lot of people. I mean, Ronnie McMahon was very influential, because I started when I came here at 3D eventing. Ronnie would have, Ronnie was, he had been second in badminton, very good cross-country rider, and very organised, and very good at making sure all three phases, the dressage, the cross-country and the jumping, that we did them pretty well. And it was great for the Army to have that. The great thing about eventing is, I started off green enough. If you kicked me into show jumping straight away, maybe I wouldn't have made it, I don't know. But eventing opens up the eye a little bit. You get to see the distance. You have to get into the rhythm, and that gives you something for life. And having that rhythm is so important. So Ronnie McMahon would have been into that, and we would have trained. And the training would have been, we did hunting with the Army in places, and then we went to. We would go down, we had a course down the Glen of Amal, which Ulick McAvady built, who is Omega Air now. He owns a company called Omega Air, and he was involved with Knock Airport and stuff like that. But Ulick at the time was here in the army, and he built a course down there. So we used to jump into the river down the Glen of Mall and go down and up and down the hills there. So that was, a lot of that stuff helped me later on. You know, if you were doing the Hickstead Derby or whatever, having that cross-country experience was very good. The other part was having competition within ourselves. You know, there was a number of riders here in the school, Con Power and John Leddingham and myself, and there would have been competition between us to have horses, to get whoever the good horses were, and also to be successful and get on the team, because like we saw Dublin Horse Show, it's so important to be there. So being pushed, I suppose that's what I'd put down as being pushed. Other people challenging you to be better. Yes. And that's what was good about here. Con Power, John Leddingham. It was nice to have people who would definitely, if you weren't producing, would show it up.
Speaking with Des and Dee O'Sullivan, it sounded like it was a similar culture even with the grooms. Everyone was pushing themselves to be better because everybody wanted those opportunities. And I guess it's that hunger, that culture that lifts everybody.
Yeah, and I suppose from the outside, when you look at equestrian, you say, oh, their riders are up on their high horse and they're going around. But I have to say that the grooms, the administrative staff, all of the people involved are very, very important, because not only do they do a good job, but funnily enough, they push you. So if they have a competition between themselves, if John was going well and I wasn't, whoever's grooming for me, let it be Dee or Jimmy Doyle or let it be Dennis Gann, any of those who were really great people, they would be saying to you, you know, we're not doing well. Why are we not doing well? We need to do well. There was a case there of an NCO at one stage, a very nice guy, and he was at a show, and there was a little bit of a mix-up in the ring with one of the army riders riding, and he didn't do the right thing. When he came out, I thought he was going to kill the rider. He said to him, listen, that was the worst round I've ever seen in your life. Now here you have a captain riding, and he thinks he's the great captain, and he comes out, and the NCO side says to him, I expected a lot better from you. And that you know, and you have, and that's the way it should be. High standards.
And that's it. And from talking to various different people that were involved in those times, it was so much more than a job for people. They weren't just doing their basic hours. Like, a person has a reaction like that because of how much it means to them as well.
Yeah. But I think the equestrian sport is like that now. I mean, Jeff Curran goes through the same stuff as I did. If he goes to Dublin, there's an expectation of winning, and his staff that surround him have an expectation that he will produce, and that their hours of work, and they work very hard. I mean, that's one of the great things, is that the people who support you, unconditionally, I suppose. They support you really, really well.
Particularly in those earlier years, had you very clear goals or ambitions and things that you wanted to reach for or achieve in the sport? And had you even a clear path? Because it was interesting that at the start that you were eventing as well as show jumping, and eventing quite successfully, because at one point you were in the mix for Montreal for eventing. But bringing it back to those earlier years, had you clear goals and ambitions, that things that you were reaching for?
Yeah. I think every year I would set goals for myself. Yeah, every year. I mean, with the eventing, it was to get to the Olympics, and I was quite young at that time. I suppose I would have pushed very hard, and I missed getting there. I was national champion that year, and I felt I was good enough to go there, and I won the trial for the Olympics, but I didn't get to go. So instead of taking it negatively, I took it that I'll try harder. I must be missing something that I didn't get, so I would try harder. So after that, I Colonel Ringles decided I would concentrate more on show jumping. And it occurred at the same time where I had a kidney that didn't stay quite right, so it went out. So every time I met people after that, they thought I had to give up eventing because I had a missing kidney, but it wasn't anything to do with it at all. And they were always standing around wondering, was I going to go to the loo more often? But that was not the case either. So, it was absolutely fine. So I went show jumping after that. And I was very lucky to get a horse called Clunet. Con rode it before, very, very successfully. And the horse was, I think I was leading money winner here that first year with the horse in Ireland. And he was a wonderful little horse, very good competitor, very fast, turned, a little bit difficult here and there, but he was really nice. So I was lucky. The opportunities the Army gave me were top.
While you have some partnerships that are particularly iconic, especially with Rock Barton, which I'll touch on in a minute, was there a horse that you were given that took a lot longer to figure out, but then you found the key to?
Yeah, there was. Mostrim was probably... He looked small, but he was actually quite tall. He was very sensitive, strong, fast, big stride, not easy. In the beginning, not easy. I found him quite difficult, but he was a wonderful horse to win. He could win 3 classes at a show. I mean, he won, I don't know how many internationals. He could have won 30 or 40, maybe he won 30 international classes, you know. And he was really, really competitive horse. And you get to like horses like that. He had a presence when he came to the ring. Rock Barton was the same. Rock Barton wouldn't suffer fools. He was never what you call a kiddie horse or something like that. He would always be, you'd see, he had a kind of a noble way of carrying himself. And Mostrim was a bit the same. He was, so I like Mostrim, yeah. He was a bit different. If he was human, we'd say he was a bit different.
Can you talk me through when you took over the ride on Rock Barton, what that was like initially? And also, did you feel any additional pressure? Because sometimes the equitation school will buy a new horse and they'll have to make a decision on who's going to get that horse. But maybe the horse is quite young or doesn't have that much form. Taking on a horse like Rock Barton, who was already a high profile horse, did you feel an additional weight of pressure or expectation? And did it take you long to gel, or were you off?
There was expectation, but I honestly can say I didn't see it as a pressure. I saw it as an opportunity. And I consciously thought about that and said, you know, in the string that I had, is this a bonus to have? Yes. Is it an opportunity? Yes. Can the horse win? Yes. Can he jump at the highest level? Yes. So yeah, it was a fantastic opportunity for me. And so, and I didn't gel straight away. I mean, I had to go back over videos and look at it and see how Con rode it, and was I capable? And people are different. I wasn't Con, and so I had to kind of try to fit in with the horse as best I could. And bit by bit, it started to come. And I suppose in the end, I aimed off with him for championships. That was my goal for a lot of any horse I had that had the possibility. I would aim off for the Europeans, the World Championships, maybe to a lesser extent, kind of the indoors, the World Cup final, but definitely the Olympics would have been in the back of my mind all the time. Hard to get to, but yeah, he worked, but it was a lot of work to get to that particular stage, you know.
You had a lot of incredible days with him. What was your first international win with him?
Probably, I would say, was it the Dublin Indoor?
Okay.
I won a class there. I think it was a jump-off class. And I suppose what keeps it in your mind a little bit, the first prize, most people wouldn't realise what it was. It was a sheep.
Yeah, it was a Texel Yo.
Texel Yo, yeah. So that was it. And so, yeah, it was different. And I still have the photograph of the horse looking at the Yo, wondering, what the hell is this? Why would somebody give you a Texel? And so I had to meet the Dutch ambassador afterwards. And it was one of the first Texels into Ireland. So yeah, it was, yeah, so it was easy enough to remember then.
I didn't know that was your first win, but I had read that before.
I think
and I thought it was an unusual prize.
Yeah, it was an unusual prize, yeah.
Did you keep her?
There's a big story. My wife would not be too happy with the results. Yes, I kept and I'm bred. I should have said goodbye, but I became a sheep farmer for a while, and it was difficult. They're very special, and if you feed too much, the lambs have difficulty, and if it's a specialist thing. Yeah. So I had to learn about that, and it went okay. It went well, but my wife wasn't enamored with having sheep around. Let's say.
It's definitely, of all the prizes that I've seen, there were some great prizes of the past, and people were winning cars and different things. But that was definitely one of the more unusual ones.
That was very unusual. I mean, I got a lot of stick when that happened. Yeah. That's for sure.
You would eventually go on to partner Rock Barton at Olympic Games.
Yeah.
You represented Ireland at 2 Olympic Games in your time.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you talk me through what the experience was like of the 2 of those Olympics and how they differed on 2 different horses as well?
The Olympics is it's very special. The problem sometimes is that you're there a long time. So like I was in LA actually the next Olympics now is in LA, it's in Santa Anita, the same place. And the difficulty for all, whether they be athletes or whatever, it's a special thing. So everybody says there are 2 types of people that go there. There are the tourists and there are the people who compete. And that's very true. You'll hear people saying they're just going there for the Olympic experience. So I was hoping that wouldn't be the case. I carried the flag for the main team, so they figured I had a good chance in the opening ceremony, which was a great honour. So we were there for 5 weeks, a lot of kind of hanging around. So what I organised myself was to ride other horses in the area. I phoned up a stable and I said, because to keep fit, I had only 1 horse and you couldn't keep working him for 5 weeks. So, or whatever it was. And then so I rode horses there every day. I used to go out and ride 4 or 5 horses every day and try and keep fit. And I had only 1 class, which was the final of the individual. It went okay. All the time there, the climate and everything, I don't know that he had acclimatized great. And maybe I didn't ride as well as I should have either. That could well be the case. I learned lessons from it, which did help me later on. Being that long there is certainly a disadvantage. Nowadays, because of the whole sport, people go in there and they come out a lot quicker.
Yes. What were some of the main takeaways that you were able to apply to future championship preparation?
To try and make sure that when you worked them, that you weren't trying to work them for the competition. If you were there for a period of time, that you were trying, the initial part should be just keeping them fit, happy, and not overworking them.
Okay.
And many people, like there was one guy turned up at, I think it was at Seoul, and they had great facilities, and one of them was that you could swim your horse.
Okay.
But the guy never had swimming with the horse before. He brought it down, he swam the horse. The horse went terrible. He'd never used those muscles before, and suddenly he's coming to the Olympics and he does that. So I learned, try to not work them harder, try to keep them very fresh, try to keep them fit, try to keep them, not to overdo it. Yeah, not to overdo it, not to overwork it, not to get so, because by nature I'm a bit of an enthusiast. So I had to just curb that, and that would be one big lesson. The other lesson would be, I suppose, to try and find out beforehand what kind of courses I should expect. So Olaf Peterson was building in the next one in Seoul. So I would have looked at the course plans that he had done in Europe before going for the previous year. I'd have tried to build some of the lines that he built. And I think that was a really good thing. And that's what I do to this day. If Alan Wade is building, we'll try and look at his courses before, and it looks now that Alan may well build in the Olympic Games, the next Olympic Games
in LA.
In LA, yeah, and so that he'd be well worth watching over the next 3 or 4 years. So you'll have people targeting his courses and going to the shows where he builds trying to find, because he will have to try out some of the lines. So that'll be one lesson.
Yeah. Of all the different championships that you competed in, is there one that kind of brought you the most personal satisfaction?
Yeah, I mean, everybody would say probably Dublin in '82, big fourth in it. But like, yeah, the horse jumped great. He won the top. Rock Barton jumped great. I had Colonel Ringers there with me, and it was good, you know, that an Army rider in Dublin at home produced something there, you know, for the country, and it was really a good showcase for me. But I suppose being fourth, there was a bit of an anticlimax because you don't get a medal, and so you come out of there, you know, feeling. The first 2 days I was pretty deflated after it, yeah, because I felt that it was a fantastic opportunity. But I rode other horses there that were quite different, and maybe at the time you'd have a lot of guys who ride outside of the Army would ride a lot of different horses like dealers and stuff. So maybe I hadn't enough. We used to swap the horses at that stage, and they were quite different. So I had Angle's Arc, which was a lovely horse to ride, but quite different from Fire, who was a big German horse, like a brute, like trying to manhandle him. And then you had Ideal Delay, which was a young horse, and he was a little bit knackered by the last day because I think he was only 8 or 9. He was quite young, you know. So. Maybe you have to look to yourself always. If you don't produce, you have to look to yourself and try to be realistic and see what are the lessons I can learn. Not to be too hard on yourself, but try to learn the lessons. And if you learn lessons from everything, then you will improve for the next one.
You represented Ireland on over 50 Nations Cups in your time.
Yeah.
Is there a particular Nations Cup appearance that was just that bit more special to you than all the others?
All Irish riders would say winning in Dublin, winning the Aga Khan. I was lucky enough to win it 3 times, I think, on 3 different horses. And I suppose when I won it with Lismore, because Lismore, he wasn't the biggest jumper in the world. There was a lot of pressure that year on it to get on the team. And on the team, there was a lot of pressure to produce a clear round, and he did. But in Dublin is the place because of the atmosphere. Number one, the tradition that's there. I mean, if you ever were in that position as an Irish rider down there, when you're walking around the days before, they're not asking you about other classes. What's going to happen on Friday? Who's going to be on the team? So I'm trotting around the practice ring the morning of the Aga Khan. You're trotting around and you're in your own little world, trotting around. Next minute, the guy will stop you and say, how are you going to get on today? Didn't jump so well on Wednesday, did he? You know, Irish guys, they know more about the horses, and they'll be asking you about that. And then you'd have relations coming up who mightn't know anything about horses. And they expect that you stay there for 20 minutes, and you're kind of on a tight schedule because you're trying to get ready mentally and be on time for everything. So Dublin brings its own special pressures that way. Then you go on the parade and you hear people on the side, and the parade is inspirational and it's one of the few places that the parade continues. It's a fantastic organisation down there. Any of the people, it doesn't matter who they are, Rodrigo Pessoa, the top guys in the world, Dublin for them is the place. Yeah. And that parade, it's a pain. Your horse, drive your horse mad going around there, the band hitting the drums and all the rest. But the people are close to you. They see the horses close. They see the emotion in the riders' faces. And I think it's good. So winning in Dublin, any of the 3 Aga Khans I could pick and say, yeah, that was great. Or I suppose I won in Mill Street when Noel Duggan organised the derby, the indoor derby at one stage. I won it there. And it was interesting, and Noel increased, after I jumped the clear round, Noel came in and he announced he was going to increase the prize money because there was not room for one more person. You couldn't got your cat in there. And so that was also a very special night, you know.
You mentioned about getting yourself ready mentally in the likes of, say, the run up to something like jumping the Aga Khan. When we started the conversation, you talked about you as a child and trying to get the confidence element right. It's actually hard to imagine you as that child now.
Yeah.
Very deliberate, very sure of yourself. Everything is very deliberate and seems very planned. When you were preparing for those big days, had you systems or had you things that you would do to kind of stay focused or stay calm before those big moments?
Yeah, and I think it's for a lot of athletes who compete, it's the same. You know, you have a schedule for the day. So what time I'm going to get up, what am I going to do first? What kind of a warm-up, because I would always warm up in the morning, so I'd go up to Simmons Court, warm up. Am I going to work on shortening, lengthening? Am I going to do lateral work? Am I going to just walk around and let them relax? And so there would be a particular schedule the whole way up to, I'm going to be in early for the course. So the course walk maybe is at 11 or 12. I want to walk it a bit earlier. So I'd go and walk the course if there was an earlier class, but I'd walk the parts of the Nations Cup. I'd get the course plan early. I'd go through it to see what was in it, what fences, where they were, all that kind of stuff. And so there was a particular thing. And then I suppose a clear pathway for warming up. How many fences ideally would I like to jump before I went in? What fence would I finish at? Skinny oxer, wider oxer, taller, vertical, or whatever. And then what kind of thought process on the way to the ring, what to go and do. So I'll revise the course 2 or 3 times. I might say it out to the groom who was with me and I'd say to him, I'm going to go through it here, go through that. And then when I'd drive down the pocket, to try and get the timing right, that I wasn't standing there too long and that I could walk straight in. And then before going in, try to just maybe breathe a little bit, take a few deep breaths. And again, visualize the course as you're standing at the gate going there, there, there. What are the things I got to watch out for? If this doesn't work well, what do I do? So you have the what ifs as well, but a very clear plan as to how to do it. And when you go in then, it's just like a cold execution of a plan and jump. And one of the things have said to myself is each fence at a time and don't react to anything that has happened because I can't fix it.
Yes, okay.
So that I suppose that would be it. A bit robotic, I suppose, maybe.
And I suppose you're doing everything to not be focusing about all those external factors, emotions creeping in. And then particularly with Dublin, when you hear Irish riders, when the gate of the pocket opens and they go into the arena, particularly for something like an Aga Khan, and you've literally heard some of them talk about when you hear the gate click behind you, you're on your own. Did you find that you became quite good at shutting everything else out from that point?
Yeah. I mean, you're that stage of your career, you're kind of doing a lot of horse shows and a lot of competing. And I would read also. I would read a lot of mental fitness books, gone to lectures on that, watched other people. I mean, certainly I had an interest in coaching all the way up. So I would have always sat at the practice ring watching people, watch how they not only prepared jumping wise, but how they got themselves calm, or what did were they rushing about? People who get nervous generally rush. You rush to do this, rush to do that. So the important thing is nearly slow the whole thing down. So it didn't come by nature. I mean, I had to work at it, so that's why I'm very, when I see people now, we have so many riders in Ireland now, so many good riders who are calm, young guys, 20 years of age, 21 years of age, 18 years of age, and really calm beyond their years,
Even at the Nations Cup on Friday, it is absolutely incredible to see Tom Watchman, Seamus Hughes Kennedy, that you would swear these guys are 60 at the end of their careers with the manner in which they approach Aga Khan debuts.
But they're the people coaching them.
Yes.
are coaching them, and part of every day's coaching is our elements of mental fitness. And that is there. Ger O'Neill or Cian O'Connor. Yes. I mean, Ger O'Neill is wonderful. He's a calm guy. He's very confident. He imbues confidence. He gives confidence. And you can see that. And he would have the same kind of an approach. And he uses the coaching system that we have here. And he's a really top coach, as of course Cian is.
Yes. You've mentioned your interest in coaching, and that seemed to be there quite early on. It's something that has now formed a huge part of your life since you would have stopped riding. Particularly for anyone listening to this conversation outside of the country, will you talk to me about the Army Equitation School's role in coaching and how that has really set the path for a lot of what happens internationally?
Yeah, I mean, the Army Equitation School has been a fantastic place to foster skills that have helped not only the equestrian community, but others as well. Like I said, Colonel Billy Ringrose, he was the president of the RDS. He was the chairman of the equestrian committee there. He was involved with so many organizations and helping them, as was Colonel Ned Campion, who was Secretary General of the Federation, yes. And again helping with young riders and helping the sport and helped to devise, if you like, the modern federation that's here. He was one of the guys who did that. They also, I think, Colonel Campion and Ronnie McMahon were involved with the Riding for the Disabled and setting up that organisation here in Ireland. And we go further from that then. Here in the school, you had the opportunity, when I came in, to see different coaches and to see how they operate. For instance, the Eric Boubel that was here, and there were other ones in the country at the time that we would have got to see, and we'd been sent to them to do lessons with them. So that got the coaching thing going. And in the school, we had the opportunity, and I had a great opportunity. I had some wonderful young riders here, Shane Carey and David O'Brien, top class riders who were really, really good. And they helped me with the proofing, if you like, distances, proofing in techniques, proofing gymnastics, and for the coaching thing that is here. So we would have had different horses, so we would measure distances and find out what works well, what's the length of the stride, how much can you shorten the stride, how much can it lengthen, all of those kind of things, and quantified. So the school I would see as being a centre of excellence for good riding and for the development of the sport here. And I think it is a great example, and it is much loved, as I saw in Dublin this week with the reception that Jeff Curran got. To see an Army rider win down there, in general, the population loved that.
Yes. As I mentioned, coaching has become a huge part of your life now. And even in the chats that we've had earlier today or during the horse show, it's incredible to hear the number of different places and countries that coaching has brought you to, or that you've sought out through coaching. I'd like to just touch on a few of those experiences for anyone that's less familiar, but I suppose the largest period of time has probably been your time in Turkey.
Yeah.
Could you tell me about how that came about and give a little bit of an overview on what that entailed?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, all of those opportunities come because of the Army Equitation School, because of its reputation, because it has a good reputation. And I was contacted by a family in Turkey, and would I be interested to help? So at a stage I did, and the good thing about them was they were interested in the coaching. So they set up the same coaching system is in Turkey as is in Ireland. They had brought in people from outside, and then there were FEI coaching courses there, which are the same as the ones that we have here in Ireland. So there are many of the riders in Turkey who if you transplanted them here now, they would know the same systems. And you could bring some of the coaches from Turkey to here, and they would be coaching in the same style as our good coaches here. So I was there for a long time. Since I left the army, I was there. We had good riders there. Actually, Gerry Flynn rode there, and who was my ADAM officer for a while, Patrick McCartan, he was there in Turkey as well. So the army has, I don't think we can be called missionaries, but we have some kind of role in helping people to be better at what they do.
And it is particularly impressive, and when these conversations happen, you realize just how far-reaching from riders who either through their careers here or go on to have careers elsewhere, coaches, grooms, and where they go, how far-reaching the effects of the equitation school has been throughout the equestrian world is incredible.
I think you can go to a huge number of countries and people know that it has had an influence. I mean, I was lucky that FEI, which is the governing body of the sport, I was involved with as chairman of the coaching committee for them for quite a while, and we set up that committee there. So we would have had courses all over South America, every single country there, and others, and they would know that the army, a lot of the techniques that were being used were proofed at the Army Equitation School in Dublin. So it has a good influence around the place, and there are people who worked in the school as grooms who are in the States now and who are doing really, really well. They're in Germany and Holland and different places. So there's always a turnover like that, but it brings, if you like, spreads the idea that Ireland now is even more regarded as a horse country. You hear the guys at the horse show going, the audience are fantastic. This is a horsey country. People understand horses and they understand success. And we're at a great place now at the minute, and the army has had a role in that.
Just as you said, it's a phrase that comes up a lot whenever you hear people who are successful in Dublin when they're making reference. And sometimes you hear maybe a more generic or a more standard comment of people thanking crowds when they win particular events around the world. But how they talk about it here just feels very different. Of course, we're going to be a little bit biased.
Yeah.
But even in the press conference yesterday, it was something that was spoken about Laura Crouch and Rodrigo Pessoa, and just how, I suppose, the difference of doing it here, because the understanding and the involvement, every second person that they'd talk to around the ring is going to have some involvement in it. Going forward, where do you see on the coaching side of things that more could be done? Because Ireland as a nation was the place to go to, say, buy horses previously, and everyone around the world, it was the go-to place, the place. As a country, we let our foot off the gas and we got completely left behind in that respect, especially in the show jumping world, until probably the past 10 or 15 years again. So just because coaching has been well developed to now doesn't mean that we can just rest easy now. I
could interrupt you with that one. We are resting easy. The equestrian industry at the minute is resting easy and allowing the coaching to become less important. And that really will be a shame if that happens, because there is a cohort of people in the country who have used the techniques or the coaching that was developed by the National Coaching and Training Centre and by the Army Equitation School, and they're letting it dissipate a little bit, and that would be an awful pity, because we have at the moment, I could mention you 4 or 5 really good coaches, including ex-army coaches, and who are really influential, who are world class, who are regarded everywhere. And I think it's so important not only to have those, but to have the next generation coming forward. I mean, the likes of me now, I would be trying to give back. I think that it's important that we bring on the next, and we have such really good expertise the whole way up. If you look at the ponies, the 12-2 kids, they ride really super, absolutely. The 138s, the 148s, the young riders. We're winning the European Championships at young riders, at juniors, at children, at ponies, right? It's a golden age for these riders. And the Army can put their hand up and say, we have had influence in that through all of the guys who've gone right back for the last 30 or 40 years. Guys who helped here to keep the school going. And I think the school has a place as a centre of excellence. It has a place for the development of coaches. And the method is that you have tutors who develop coaches and coaches develop riders. We have developed tutors here, and a tutor gives a coaching course and he may have 12 coaches. Those 12 coaches go out and coach. Each of them has an influence on how many people, maybe 30 people. So that one tutor now has an influence on about 360, 400 people just from that one course. Yeah. So the system we have here is fantastic for the future. And it's the one used by all of the sports in Ireland. And many of the sports abroad, in many places, aren't as well developed as we are, with a very good template for the development of coaching. And that, the equestrian one for Ireland, was developed here in the Army Equitation School in McKee Barracks.
We spoke about LA a little bit ago. And roll around to the next Olympics, it's going to be back in LA.
Yeah.
As a coach, what are your hopes or ambitions, and is that something you're working towards being a part of?
Yeah, I suppose you'd always like to be a part of it, yeah. I mean, if I look at the young people that we have at the moment, the two guys you mentioned there, Seamus Hughes Kennedy and Tom Watchman, are good ones, but there's other ones behind them. There's other ones who could come into the mix as well. Yes. The older ones are going to have to look to their laurels for it. How would I be involved? I don't know. I'll see. It's. I don't know at this minute in time. It's a bit far out. It would be nice to have somebody there. Do I need the pressure? Maybe because there's a lot of pressure for games. A lot of pressure for it. I hope that in Ireland we have never won a team medal at Olympics, and I think this is time for that to happen. And we have good riders, so we need to know what it takes to win at the Olympic Games. And we have a lot of good people here who know a lot about it, and sometimes those are kept outside the sphere of influence, and that's wrong.
In a number of ways, we've touched on the influence that the Equitation School has had here, both in inspiring the generations that came after many of you as riders, both in terms of developing the coaching system, and as you just touched on, in terms of ways that they could still be involved from a more centre of excellence role. There have been various adaptations in the past and changes around regulations and how horses are sourced, how some of the criteria around that, in terms of broadening the pool available in terms of horsepower. Are there any changes that you see as within the realms of possibility that to further attract either on the horsepower side, on the rider side, or to ensure that the Equitation School is given the opportunity to have maximum involvement in the sector? Are the things that you have in your mind? Because I'm sure at various different points as you're on your travels around the world, you're reflecting on how it could be brought on another level.
Yeah, there would be a few areas, I think. I think we already have helped a good bit with the breeding, in that a lot of our guys here go around and they talk about the breeding and what best way to go. And we brought in leasing here into the Army, leasing horses, which has been, I think, quite successful. And so how could we have the best horses here? So I suppose we have to think of maybe public-private partnership with people, donors, which we already have had here in the Army Equitation School, and Maurice Cassidy, who's been absolutely fantastic. We had Sir John Galvin before, who gave eventers and gave some show jumpers to us. And that's very, very welcome. If there was, I suppose if there was tax relief and some of those things for people, it might be helpful to do that. We could also look, is there a breeding thing that the Army could be involved with? Now, that is a huge thing. You'd have to research it really well. But when you see an auction at the horse show this week selling embryos, and people buying embryos. The embryos are a lot cheaper than than the finished product, but it's a long road. So I think there needs to be a look at all of the things that could help to have the next Kilbaha in the Army Equitation School, the next Rock Barton, the next one that's going to have a chance at a medal at a Games or a medal at a World Championships. I think we need to sit down and look at that. There are ways. Ireland is apparently as an economy going really well. There are people who stand up and say they would like to see they support things that are helping a national effort in a way. And the Army Equitation School, in my opinion, deserves that kind of support. But I suppose it needs to be researched, organised and implemented.
The question I like to finish each interview with is always around the advice for younger riders. For instance, if I'm speaking to a rider, or younger breeders, if I'm speaking to a breeder. So what advice to any young riders that are listening that aspire to have a successful international career, or any young riders that are thinking they would love to be a part of what's happening here at McKee Barracks?
Yeah, I think they've got to look at it and say, first thing is that any equestrian activity, be it the flat racing, the jump, the national hunt, or the show jumping or eventing or dressage, first thing is hard work. Talent is one thing. I would much prefer to have somebody with less talent and more hard work than all the talent and not working. I think that's a truism. And then the next thing is for somebody, and the Irish young guys have become much better at that, realizing there is a career. So there's a number of careers within equestrian and you need the expertise for that. So there is the riding. So can I be good at riding? Can I be good at dealing? Yeah. Can I be good at coaching? So I have 3 streams. And if I have those 3 streams, I will have a good living from this. Even if I'm not the best show jumper in the world, I can still make a living from it. And so therefore, those will be the 3 elements of it that they should be looking to make themselves better. And that means getting experience in those 3 areas. One is the riding, one is the dealing, and one would be the breeding, or the coaching, the coaching. Yes. And if you do that, you're going to have a chance of surviving in what is a very, it's a tough place to make a living. And we have plenty of those guys that can do that. I tell you, I'm so impressed with the young riders. I'm very impressed with the current Army. There's a few young Army riders who look like they have a real promise.